You from Jerusalem, folks. Back to my old stomping grounds here on my balcony overlooking the Cassia Hotel over there. Cassia Hotel is not any longer full of people that were driven out of their homes. You'll recall that when we were here at the beginning of the war, that entire hotel was a place for refugees who had been driven out of their homes in the north. Those people have all gone back to Kiryat Shimona, and now there, I believe, are actual hotel guests staying in this hotel now. So things are coming back. And, I just posted something over at chuckholton.com that you should go look at. I've been hearing these pundits like Tucker Carlson, Colonel McGregor, and people like that, especially during the conflict with Iran over the last week, that were all saying Israel is being taken apart at the seams. They're being crushed. They're crumbling. The whole country is going up in flames. And I'll be honest with you. I flew into Tel Aviv today, drove through Tel Aviv on the way out of town. Things look pretty normal. I drove all the way to Jerusalem. Drove around Jerusalem a little bit, went to the mall. Mall was full. People were out shopping, doing their thing, going to restaurants. Everything's not closed. Everything's back open. And today's a Sunday, so it's kind of a day of rest, and it's a little slower than most days, but that's normal here in Jerusalem. But I just posted a video over at chuckholton.com of Jaffa Street. I was down on Jaffa Street doing some shopping, and it's wide open. There's people just out for a stroll. There's artisans selling their goods. There's people playing guitars and singing and stuff like that. I mean, people pushing babies in baby carriages. Israel is doing fine, and they are winning this war. And anybody who says otherwise is not in Israel. That's all I'll have to say about that. I don't need to say anything further there. Now, the Houthis, true to form, have been doing their best to create a nuisance, make a nuisance of themselves. And they did fire a missile at Israel today. It didn't make it, it didn't hit anything. It was intercepted, as most of them are. However, they also attacked a merchant ship. Now, I think it's called the Magic Seas, and it's a Liberian flagged ship. As you know, with flags of convenience, the country that it's flagged under doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's not, a flag of convenience is just kind of like you starting your LLC in Delaware because the tax benefits are better than starting it in your home state if you don't live in Delaware. So you can flag your ship in any country of the world. Most ships flag themselves. Thank you very much, William. Most ships flag themselves in like Panama, Liberia, places like that, because they have more lenient rules for what you have to do with your ship to keep it on the ocean. The ship that was hit by the Houthis today was actually, even though it was flagged in Liberia, it was a Greek ship owned by a Greek shipping company. It's a publicly held company, so you yourself could own stock in that shipping company if you wanted to. It's not an Israeli ship. It doesn't have any Israelis on it. It doesn't have anything to do with Israel. It just happened to be 50 miles off the coast of Hodeidah in Yemen. And so it was a target of opportunity for the Houthis. Now this is significant because the Houthis have not struck a ship since April and have not sunk a ship for more than a year, since last June. You recall after Operation Operation Rough Rider. Midnight Hammer was the one in Iran. Operation Rough Rider was when President Trump went after the Houthis. once that was concluded, the Houthis agreed, you stop bombing us and we will stop targeting ships in the Bab el-Mandab Straits, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. Well, now they have targeted another ship in the Red Sea, and it appears that they're sinking it because it was first attacked by multiple boats with soldiers in them or whatever, shooting machine guns at the ship. The ship shot back because they had a security crew on the ship. But then the ship was targeted by 4 unmanned surface drone boats, for lack of a better term. And they were, and at least 2 of those drones struck the ship and damaged it to the point that they're now preparing to abandon the ship in the Red Sea. And it looks like it may go down. Now, again, this is significant because a part of the ceasefire with the United States was that they would stop doing this. Now they have started back up again. So that probably means that Israel will go after them. It may also mean that the United States will go after the Houthis once again. That's a pretty egregious violation of the agreement that they made. And that, hang on a second. Please send link to page. Now, do me a favor, folks. We got almost 1,000 people watching. Go to the chat and put where you're watching from, because it tells the algorithm that a lot of people are watching and from all over the place. As a matter of fact, I had a couple of people that have been longtime viewers come up and greet me while I was having some falafel tonight for dinner. They walked by and then went, and backed up and went, Chuck Holton. And so we got to talking a little bit. I love meeting people that watch the show. It's really cool to be able to interface with you guys like that. And I like to do that also when we have our Zoom calls over on chuckholton.com. If you go to the locals page over there, become a supporter, about once a month we'll do a phone call where you can get on and we can see each other and we can have actual conversations and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So I would encourage you to do that and become a supporter over at chuckholton.com. Now, the problem with the Houthis that the United States has is the same problem that the Israelis have with Gaza. And I want to talk a little bit about that before I get into what's going on. I'm going to go on and talk about what's happening in Gaza, updates on the 2 American veterans who were injured by a grenade attack as they were handing out aid in Gaza yesterday. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But I want to talk first about tell you what, let's switch that around. Let me talk about that first, and then I'll talk about what I want to talk about. Yesterday, as you know, if you watch yesterday's live, there were 2 American contractors, both of them veterans. We're told that they were highly decorated veterans. Most likely they're former special operations guys. We don't know their names. That has not been released yet, or where they're from or what service they were in or anything like that. But I would venture to say they were former special operations guys. And they had just finished the distribution for the day in Han Yunis. What they're distributing are boxes of food. Now, this is important. I mean, it's germane to the story. The GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is an American NGO that was founded in Delaware, probably because of the tax benefits in Delaware. I think they're based, I think they actually are from Virginia or something. Thank you, David. Let's see. Oh, okay. I thought maybe you had a question. So they are an American NGO. They're funded by you, the U.S. taxpayer, so far at least, and they do take some donations, but it's not easy to donate to them. They've gotten about $30 million from the U.S. so far to do this, but they've spent about $80 million from what I can tell. So they must be getting other money from somewhere else. They're not getting money from the UN, that's for sure. And many other countries have thought about supporting GHF and then chosen not to. So again, it's a little murky as to exactly where they're getting all their money. There was an initial $30 million that was approved by the Trump administration to get them off the ground, and they are apparently expecting another like $500 million to help them continue to give aid to the Palestinians throughout the rest of the year. And that $500 million may have been a part of this big, beautiful bill that was just passed, but I wasn't able to nail all that down. Anyway, you have to understand how this works. They set up 4 distribution points across Gaza, and the distribution point itself is run by GHF. Most of those guys are unarmed. Some of them are Americans, and some of the Americans are armed. And then they have also hired some Palestinians to work in there, and those guys obviously are unarmed. So they are handing out this aid to the tune of a couple million meals a day at this point. Now, this is not like steaming plates of food. This is what I was picturing, was that, styrofoam plates with chili mac or something on it. But that's not what they're doing. They're handing out boxes that have about, I think, 50 meals in each box. And the box has typical staple foods like rice and beans and oil for cooking and things like that. So each one of these boxes costs about $65. And what they do is they have a big, kind of like a football field sized area that's set up, okay? And they keep everybody out of that area. It's kept open, and then they go around and they set out one of these boxes about every 6 feet or so, and they just make a grid of these boxes 6 feet by 6 feet, the entire size of this football field. Then they open the gate and they let people come in, and you can take one box. So you come in, you take a box, you go out the other side, and they run the people through there very, very quickly. Come in, grab your box, go out. Come in, grab your box, go out, and carry your box home and and cook your meal there. So there was some talk for a while that the food was going to be distributed, like fed to the people at these sites, and that was not tenable. So they've been streamlining this process as time goes on, and they've gotten better and better at it. Now, you'll see in the media where they talk about that there have been like 400 people killed as they went to get food from the distribution sites, and the majority of those were killed by the IDF. Well, what they don't say is that the IDF has very strict rules of engagement and likely is not going to fire unless some trigger has been met that gives them the right to fire on a group of people. So that could be that a group of military-age males is approaching too close to the fighting positions of the Israeli soldiers, close enough that they could lob hand grenades, for example. I think 200 meters is the standard. They have to stay at least 200 meters away from, so 2 football fields, 2 soccer fields, let's say, away from any IDF position. So the IDF doesn't let them get close. It's not like, oh, you stepped over that line and we're going to snipe you or anything like that. But if a group of, 50 military-age Palestinians comes surging across that line and is now only 100 meters from the Israeli position, then yeah, they can open fire on those people. Usually they will shoot over their heads. But keep in mind that Hamas has been intentionally causing conflict between the IDF and these people by what they do is they do everything they can to try to provoke a response from the IDF. Sometimes they're successful at that. Sometimes the IDF is forced to respond and people end up getting shot. What they also don't tell you is that the IDF will, if it's a woman, a child, something like that, they will sometimes actually allow that wounded person to get treatment. Either there have been cases where IDF medics have treated wounded kids or wounded women. I've seen videos of that. Or they will, clear out an area, make a hole, so to speak, so that the Palestinians themselves can get those people to the hospital. Right? That doesn't make it into the news stories in the mainstream media. What they also don't say is that if the IDF is pulling security on the external ring of security around these distribution sites, and they see armed militants moving towards the distribution site, they're likely going to drop a bomb on those people. And if you live in the place where the Palestinians are in Gaza, and you've been there for this entire war, and you don't know any better than to get away from people that have guns at this point, then you're probably complicit or just stupid. I mean, I hate to say that, but look, if a squad of Hamas guys are with hidden AK-47s is worming their way up to the front of the line in one of these distribution sites, well, you've got to imagine, number one, that's a trigger that would allow the IDF to strike at them. If they are surrounded by civilians, that's really unfortunate, but that's Hamas's fault. That's not the IDF's fault. And the IDF has to protect the distribution sites. So that's what they do. So yeah, there have been some people killed on their way to the sites. However, Hamas themselves has been targeting the sites and encouraging other people to target the sites as well. So there have been at least 20, according to the GHF. Thank you. I didn't see who's that. Laura, appreciate that. There have been at least 20 people who have been killed, or I'm sorry, there have been, I think, 18 killed and another 20 wounded who are employees of the GHF. But up until yesterday, they were all Palestinian employees. So likely what they're doing is kind of what we do at our embassies around the globe. And that is, we've got U.S. Marines on the inside of the embassy as security, but we don't put U.S. Marines out on the fence, out there interacting with the public. We hire local security to interact with the public and keep the public at bay. And if they manage to get through those people, then they're going to have to deal with the U.S. Marines. That's likely what the model that they're using for these distribution points down there. They have Palestinians who are interfacing with the civilians that are coming in to get their food. There are a couple reasons for that. Number one, they speak the language. Number two, it's less likely that somebody's going to target them because they are Palestinians as well. But what we've seen is that Hamas wants those people dead. They want to punish those people for working with the GHF. Now, think about this. They're trying to kill the very people who are helping distribute food to the people of Gaza. So it is abundantly clear. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Hamas does not care about getting food to the people. They only care about making money off of getting food to the people. And since in this way, with the GHF, they can't make money because it's being given directly to the people, then they want those people to die. And they're actually putting out bounties on the heads of the people who work for the GHF. On top of that, the GHF has been just mercilessly attacked in the press by other NGOs that were handing out aid in Gaza, but were giving it to Hamas. So the UNHCR, UNRWA, NGOs like that, they've all forbidden any NGOs that work with them from doing anything with GHF at all. Now, why? Why would they do that? If GHF has handed out more than 60 million meals, 62 million meals as of today, in Gaza in the last few weeks, obviously they're doing something right. Obviously, they have a system that is working. Why would the United Nations be against that? They're saying, well, because it can't be done in a nonpartisan way. How can giving food to people be partisan? Now, if you're giving food to Hamas to sell to the people, that definitely is partisan. That means you're siding with Hamas. But if you're just giving food freely to the people directly, that's not political. That's not, there's no political anything with that. But yet the United Nations says, oh no, that's too biased because Israel is providing security. So not only has the UN refused to do any business with GHF, but they have encouraged through their words, through their rhetoric, the attacks on the GHF, and in so doing have encouraged these attacks that have happened now against U.S. citizens who are working in Gaza. Now, these two guys, again, highly decorated U.S. military veterans, they got transported to the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba. That's the same hospital, you'll recall, that was bombed by Iran with a missile on June 19th. And they're being treated there, and they're expected to fully recover. So their wounds are not life-threatening. Just shrapnel wounds to the legs and torso. But I guess they'll be okay. Now, in addition to the negative media that the GHF has received, there's a legal organization. It's a left-wing, some kind of left-wing legal organization. Let's try to, I have it in my notes here. What's the name of this thing? I had a lot of notes on this one. Oh, here they are. It's called CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights, CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights. And it's a left-leaning legal advocacy organization based in New York City. I've actually seen these guys at Antifa riots. They put on these stupid little hats that say legal observer, and they wear these little vests that say legal observer, and they go around with a notepad, and they're just looking for any amount of force being used by the police so that they can, observe and then help the rioters bring suit against the city for excessive use of force. And by doing that, they have managed to get millions, tens of millions of dollars out of cities like Portland and San Francisco and Seattle and New York, because people are rioting, they're burning cars, smashing windows, spray painting buildings, and the police move in and grab these people. And so they grab one guy, and 6 other Antifa guys go grab the police and try to drag their friend away from him, try to unarrest him. And so the police are in a scuffle, to say the least, with 6 or 8 guys. Somebody gets punched or something like that, and immediately this left-wing Center for Constitutional Responsibility says, aha, and they note that down, and then they bring a lawsuit against the city. And so anyway, they have been very, very pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian throughout the entire war. And this organization put out a memorandum the other day that said not only are members of GHF liable for war crimes, okay, so what are these guys doing? They're handing out aid to civilians in Gaza. So CCR says these people are going to be brought up on charges for war crimes for doing what they're doing in Gaza. And you might go, scratch your head and say, wait a second, how is handing out aid to the people who are needy in Gaza a war crime? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And CCR says, well, it's a war crime because there are Israeli troops nearby. And if you're near Israeli troops and you're benefiting from their security, then you are complicit in the war crimes that the Israelis have been committing in Gaza. That's their convoluted legal logic for threatening the members of GHF, especially when, it's especially ridiculous when a lot of the members who are doing the work for GHF are actually Palestinians. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to bring Palestinians up on charges of committing war crimes by giving food to their own people? This is how people get to the assumption that liberalism, that progressivism is a mental disorder. People, I mean, seriously. It just defies logic that this is happening. Okay, so we've got the Houthis continuing with their shenanigans in the Red Sea. We've got Hamas continuing with their shenanigans in Gaza. And I've just been sort of noodling about, isn't it ironic that here we are, the United States and Israel, two of the most powerful militaries on planet Earth, two of the most technically advanced societies on planet Earth. We have literally the ability with our military, it's the largest military in the world, $1 trillion budget this year. We have the ability to turn Gaza or Yemen or both into one giant smoking crater. We have the ability to absolutely turn those countries into dust. We have so much combat power at our disposal that at the stroke of a pen, President Trump could make Yemen into a giant dirt parking lot. And it wouldn't take much because it already is pretty much a giant dirt parking lot. The Israelis, if they wanted to, they could genocide the Palestinian people. If they wanted to do it, they have the wherewithal. They just don't have the inclination. And they could turn Gaza into a big dirt parking lot like Yemen. But we don't. And so it begs the question, what good is it to have all of this combat power if we're unwilling to use it? And I think, I'm not saying that we should use it, at least, not in that capacity, not turn Yemen into a sea of molten glass or anything. So I'm not advocating for that. But what I'm saying is, We're spending $1 trillion a year on our military, and we are unwilling to use it to its full extent. Now, if you go back to World War II, winning the war against the Axis powers meant crushing the Axis powers, absolutely crushing them, not just militarily, but economically, culturally, and in every other way, crushing them. That's why we firebombed Dresden. That's why we turned Hiroshima into a giant sheet of glass. That's why we bombed Nagasaki. We were of the mindset back then in World War II that if we're going to win this, if we're going to put America first, then winning this means winning it for real, winning it for good, getting our enemies to the point where they beg us to stop and unconditionally surrender. Since World War II, however, the United States, along with most of the free world, has sort of given up on that idea. And we've become far too moral to win ugly. To win it when we need to win and win ugly, we just can't stomach it. We don't have the stomach for it. And I'm not saying that is necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. I mean, I do think that we should engage in just war theory. We should only put our troops in the field if there's a just reason to do so. We should only put our sons and daughters at risk if there's a compelling national interest for the United States. But once we decide that there is a compelling national interest for the United States, then we should go all in until there is no longer a compelling national interest for the United States. That's my point. And that doesn't necessarily mean using nukes or anything like that. What it likely would mean, because we still are, sort of hold to the same moral rules of engagement and that the IDF does, which is that we're going to do everything we can to avoid civilian casualties, everything within reason. So we should definitely do everything within reason to avoid civilian casualties. So that means that the right way to prosecute these wars is not to have the biggest, most powerful military on planet Earth. It's to have the sneakiest, most clever military on planet Earth. And the good news is that would be a whole lot cheaper. We could probably cut the U.S. military in half if we got rid of these sort of outdated ideas that we're going to have to fight another World War II someday. Now, maybe we will, but the United States could certainly ramp up production if we got into an existential conflict somehow, in the United States or somewhere else. But taking a page from the Mossad and the very creative ways that they have found to multiply the effects of their military, I think the United States, we should be every bit as clever as the Israelis, but we're not. We're not. We're very sort of stay in our lane. This is what we do. We have a big military. We have troops to send. We have planes to go bomb things. But we are in no way being as clever as we could be in stopping these conflicts. So it doesn't matter if we had 10 times the military destructive power that we currently have. It doesn't matter because we can't employ it in Yemen. If we employed our military combat power in Yemen to its fullest extent, Yemen would be no more, and there'd be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dead civilians. So we're unwilling to make use of it, of our combat power in that way. So what we need to do is have a conversation about, well, how are we willing to make use of our combat power? And let's work on that. Let's spend money on that. And then let's recruit and train and then set loose not a couple or a dozen or 100 agents that go undercover and start to create shenanigans in our enemies' countries. But let's become, instead of the world's preeminent military power, let's become the world's preeminent power at asymmetric warfare. Right now, the United States and Western Europe are getting their clocks cleaned by the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese in the realm of asymmetric war. And in a nuclear world where both sides have nuclear weapons, asymmetric war is where it's at. Asymmetric war is going to be right up there with information war in being the primary battle space that we have to fight in. Right now, we're still looking at the kinetic battle space and saying, okay, that's our primary battle space. But it shouldn't be. The information and asymmetric battle spaces should be getting far more attention than they are getting, but they're not. And this is where I think that America's leaders have been short-sighted. The military has been, they say the generals are always fighting the last war, and that's very, very true. I've seen that a lot. So I think we need to encourage our Congress people to push our military to start thinking outside the box a lot more. Not a little bit more, a lot more, okay? Now, somebody's asking about Beeper Guy. I don't think Beeper Guy's around anymore, because Beeper Guy was a van that was down in this parking lot right here, that if you weren't a viewer back then, at the beginning of the war, when I was out here every single night in the middle of my life, this guy would pull up in this parking lot and then back his van all the way across the parking lot into a parking space very slowly. And as he backed up, it would just go beep. It was the loudest beeper I've ever heard in my life. And I just almost couldn't talk over it. And so it became this running joke with Beeper Guy, because, it was like, I just had to sit there and stop. We just had to kind of, Beeper Guy. And then he'd beep, 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 beep all across it and then park. And to this day, that guy has no idea that he became famous on our lives. Maybe somebody told him at some point, but I went down and talked to him. He was like Russian-speaking guy. I don't know who he was. Anyway, so he's not there anymore because this hotel across from me is no longer hosting refugees. So they had that bus there because it would take the refugees who didn't have cars to go shopping and go to the mall and stuff like that. Okay? So, thank you very much for all of the likes and shares, people. I appreciate all of that. It does make a difference with the algorithm. And I also want to encourage you to go over to chuckholton.com. Now, we have this new plan that is where I can answer people's questions without having to scroll through all the questions. And that will only work if I get a link to the page where my mods are putting the questions. But I am not seeing the link. Okay, so if you're modding, please go over to our chat on Google and give me a link to that Google page, because I don't have it right now. I should be able to see your questions. And we wanted to try this as a way to make it easier for me to get to your questions, because I missed so many of them that are scrolling by so fast. Oh, here we go. Here's the questions document. Okay. Okay, so this is July, what is today? Okay. Question. Doesn't Gaza have food? Seen so many videos of restaurants in Gaza. Yes, Gaza has plenty of food. I've seen that too. Amir Tsarfati posted a couple of pictures today of restaurants in Gaza serving very nice hachapuri and pizzas and things like that. So yeah, restaurants are open in Gaza. There was a seaside cafe that was bombed by the IDF last week. Well, they say it was bombed by the IDF. It kind of makes you wonder if people are all starving to death. If they've got famine in Gaza, then why are people sitting out and enjoying a seaside cafe and having, coffee on the beach? So yes, there are definitely plenty of restaurants open in Gaza. Now, the IDF currently controls about 65% of all of Gaza. And their stated goal, is to get to the point where they control 75% of Gaza. So they're getting close to their goal. And that has pushed the Gazan people into a smaller and smaller and smaller area. And I'm sorry, you do things like October 7th, you don't get to have nice things. That's the way it goes. So Catherine Lindquist asks, why haven't Gazans ever been able to take care of themselves? I think that's a rhetorical question, because they haven't been able to take care of themselves, partially because the global body has wanted them to be dependent. So they've created this dependistan in Gaza, and the Gazan people have gotten used to having everything given to them and have not been forced to go out and create for themselves. Not only that, but their leaders have taken much of what was given to them in terms of dollars and have turned that around and used it to grow their tunnel network and their weapons and their rockets and things like that. All things which, in the long run, don't help the people of Gaza at all. So that would be nice. Question, will you get to ride the Gaza prison Ferris wheel? Edward, no idea what you're talking about. Cheryl Jackson asks, what is their motive for denying aid to people in Gaza? I assume you're talking about Hamas. Hamas's motive for denying aid to people in Gaza is so that Gazans will be in bad condition, they'll be starving, and then Hamas can use that starving Gazans as a weapon in the information battle space against Israel. And at this point, that's really their only effective weapon, all right? And so that's their motive, is that they are weaponizing their own people against Israel. Leonard Anderson asks, do you think the Houthis used boat drones instead of missiles because Iran needs their remaining missiles back? Maybe, but those boat drones are cheaper, and that means they can use more of them, and they can't really be shot down by any of the weapons on these cargo vessels. This vessel that was struck today it's called a Cargo Max or a Panamax vessel. It was a large container ship. Normally, those ships don't have security teams on them. They don't have weapons on them. But if they're in this area of the Red Sea, then they're likely going to have a security team with weapons. But those weapons are going to be pretty much limited to small arms. And small arms are going to be pretty ineffective against either a missile, a drone, or a surface boat. So it looks like what these guys did is they came out in a fleet of small boats, some of those boats had people in them with guns that started shooting at the security team on the ship, sort of kept their heads down, while other people on those boats piloted remotely their drone boats filled with explosives into the ship. And I believe that's how that went down. Went down literally, I guess. So I don't think it's that Iran is asking for their missiles back. I think it's that either the Houthis have lost a lot of their missile capability already due to previous strikes by the United States and Israel, and or they just decided that in this case it would be cheaper and more effective to use drone boats. Now, those boats, those unmanned surface vessels, are super easy to make. They're so easy, even a Houthi could make them. You understand that Houthis don't make missiles. Houthis get missiles from from Iran. And Iranians then teach the Houthis how to push the button, and fire those missiles in the general direction of Israel. But they are not, that's not rocket surgery. The Houthis are not bright enough and do not have the resources in any way to create their own missiles. But you can take a panga, which is essentially a very large rowboat, put a motor on it, fill it full of explosives, tie it next to a manned surface vessel, another boat like that with people in it, drive it out there at sea, get it fairly close to the ship you're trying to attack, stick the throttle open on the unmanned boat and let it go in the general direction of that ship, and you got a pretty good chance of hitting that ship and blowing it up. So those things are so dead simple, even a Houthi sand person could figure it out, and that's likely why they are doing that. Cisco asks, is it true that Lebanon and Syria would join the Abraham Accords? Well, they're talking about it. There's another kind of breaking news today that's very interesting. There are some Arab tribes in Hebron. So, you know, the West Bank is composed of Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron. Hebron is in the south, and it kind of has a special category that it fits in terms of the Oslo Accords. So you remember the Oslo Accords decided that in the West Bank areas, they would have A zones, B zones, and C zones. A zones are administered and protected by the Palestinian Authority. B zones are administered by the Palestinian Authority but protected by the IDF. And C zones are administered and protected by the Israelis. And so they sort of carved up the whole area of the West Bank into these three zones. But in Hebron, they did a little bit differently. They split the city of Hebron into two parts. About 80% of the city is, I guess you would consider it an A zone. It is run by the Palestinian Authority and protected by the Palestinian Authority. And then about 20% is run by is protected by the Israelis. Now, there are tribes that live in Hebron that are Arab tribes. They're kind of the Arab equivalent of Bedouin. Bedouin are nomadic, sheep herding kind of people, and there are a lot of them here in Israel, and they're generally well respected as well, but they're not considered Arab. These Arab tribes are tight-knit tribes, but they live in the cities, and they're more merchants and businessmen than agriculture related or anything like that. And they're run by sheikhs. You know, like sheikh, you know what I'm talking about? Not a milkshake. The guy with the keffiyeh, that kind of guy. I met the one that was in charge of Djibouti one time. Sheikh Djibouti was very nice, very gracious host. He had some really killer dance parties. Oh, Sheikh Djibouti did. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. That's my favorite joke. So, at any rate, 5 sheikhs in Hebron, so the leaders of 5 of these Arab tribes, have been in discussions with the Israeli government to break off from the Palestinian Authority and literally form their own emirate inside Hebron. That is basically a self-governing emirate that's apart from the Palestinian Authority and apart from Israel, almost like its own country. And what they've done is they've approached Israel and said, hey, if you'll help us break away from the Palestinian Authority and make our own emirate, then the emirate of the Hebron will agree to sign the Abraham Accords and recognize Israel. So that might be a tempting offer for Israel. And it shows that the Palestinian Authority is losing sway over the people that it rules. And we're seeing similar things happen inside Gaza with some of the powerful tribal families, especially from the southern part in Rafah. The, what do they call it? Abu Shabab, I think, tribe from Rafah is trying to do something similar. Basically, set up a gated community in Rafah that they control. It's self-administered, right? Apart from Hamas, they're asking for help from the IDF to do that. Those guys are also claiming that they have been, the ones in Gaza. Hang on, here comes tonight's nightly, very loud ambulance. I swear Israel has the loudest ambulances on planet Earth. They can make, beeper guy got a new job. No, if you recall, every night doing my lives before, we would have beeper guy and ambulance guy. And now ambulance guy is taking his turn. There he goes. All right. I think he's done. Now, this Abu Shabab family in Rafah has been claiming that they have been protecting the GHF distribution sites and the convoys of aid that are going to those distribution sites and assisting with all of that. For their part, GHF says, no, actually, we don't know anything about that. But it could be that they are actually helping the GHF just sort of unofficially. You know, they want that food to get distributed. And so they are using their pretty substantial family power, you know, their influence in the area, especially in southern Gaza, to keep open the corridors where the food is being driven into the distribution sites and keep those trucks from getting attacked by Hamas on their way in. Now, Hamas is still fighting in Gaza. The IDF has been, unfortunately, losing about a soldier a day for the last week or two in Gaza. There have been a tremendous number of IEDs, grenade attacks, and things like that. But in reality, Hamas is fighting a losing battle there. I mean, Israel is, day by day, taking over more ground, destroying more military infrastructure, and getting closer to the day when this can be over. Now, I'm trying to get through all the rest of these questions. Cisco asks, why hasn't the U.S. said or done anything about the American NGO in charge of distribution that were murdered by Hamas, because they weren't murdered. They were injured by Hamas. The U.S. Is supporting GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. A lot of Americans are working for them in Gaza. 2 of them were injured by a grenade, but not killed. That's why. They've had about 18 of their employees killed, but those were Palestinians that were working for GHF, not Americans. Question: are the clan's leaders in Gaza hope for resistance against Hamas? Today I listened to Yishai Fleischer that some clan's leaders in Hebron want to cooperate with Israel. Okay, I just answered that question. Brian G says, is the Iron Beam getting used more and is it working? Well, no, it's not, because they haven't had a lot of things to use it on since the war ended last week with Iran. Now, I did not hear of any instances where the Iron Beam was used against a ballistic missile from Iran. And it could be that the Iron Beam is not really at that level yet as far as tracking. Like, it could shoot down rockets, which are lower and slower and are not maneuverable in flight. So they're just kind of a trajectory. And so it's easier to figure out where they're going to be and shoot at them. Whereas these missiles that were being fired from Iran are ballistic missiles, some of them hypersonic, that can actually maneuver on their terminal phase. And so it makes them much harder to hit. So I did not hear any news at all about the Iron Beam being used against those Iranian missiles. I hope that answers your question there. Folks, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. Question, how many Hamas fighters remain? Well, that's a pretty dynamic figure because you can kill off all of the Hamas fighters and Hamas will just go get more fighters because there are tons of military age males in Gaza. And you can imagine that Hamas being Hamas, you don't really have a lot of choice. It's like, you're going to come fight for us or we're going to shoot you in the kneecaps. That kind of thing. Carlos Andrew says, question, is Putin threatening Mr. Netanyahu in any way? I have not seen where Putin was threatening Netanyahu. Putin today gave a press briefing, and I tried listening to him for a little while. He's just, that guy can talk in circles like nobody. I mean, he's an expert at that. And so it's very painful to listen to him say a bunch of nothing. But what he was saying was that actually more war in the Middle East is good for us because it'll make the price of oil go up more. And the sort of unspoken threat there was we can make the price of oil go up by, making more war in the Middle East, by encouraging or facilitating more war in the Middle East. And there's a lot of evidence out there that Russia assisted in many ways Hamas and Hezbollah in pulling off October 7th. And it makes sense because another global conflict dilutes the ability of the United States to fund and arm Ukraine. And you can bet Russia is watching as the United States pulls weapons from the pipeline on its way to Ukraine, even from Poland, and sends them to the Middle East and says, no, we need these in the Middle East now. Ukraine can't have them. And Russia's got to be looking at that and going, how do we do that more? How do we make more of that? Let's use our asymmetric war powers to cause more shenanigans in the Middle East to make the United States pull more weapons from Ukraine and move them over to the Middle East. I mean, this is how Russia operates. Okay, are sheikhs like satraps? No, Satraps were appointed positions. Sheikhs are sort of organically, the leader of a clan kind of thing. If GHF can be accused of war crimes for benefiting from security, does that mean the Red Cross can be as well in global conflict zones? Well, I mean, yeah, if you try to follow that line of reasoning, it's going to lead you right off a cliff. There's no question about that. It's not going to make sense. Question KP1 asks, can we get a fast recap before you go? I still missed what ship got hit, plus clarification on the injured, not killed aid workers. Okay. So fast recap. The Houthis struck a ship in the Red Sea today, 50 miles south of Hodeidah. They struck it with manned and unmanned surface vessels. They got in a big firefight with the security forces on the ship and then released 4 unmanned surface vessels against the ship. 2 of them struck the ship, and the ship is now foundering, and the crew is preparing to abandon the ship, and it's likely about to sink. That is the first time since April that the Houthis have struck at any kind of shipping in that area, and the first time in more than a year that they've actually successfully struck a ship and sunk it. Okay. Riverbend asks, why don't the Greeks do something? Good question. Maybe they should. Hobby Pinas says, do you think having different tribes that are armed can make Hamas think twice on robbing the Gazans? Well, the IDF believes so, because the IDF has been taking weapons that they capture from Hamas and giving them to these sort of friendlier militia groups or tribal groups inside Gaza to try to get them to fight against Hamas. Whose ship was it? It was a Greek ship that was flagged in Liberia that is a publicly traded company, has nothing to do with Israel whatsoever. Okay, that's all the questions that are on my little sheet. Or unless I missed some. No, I think I got them all. So, beeper guy! There he is! I was wrong, he's still around. Beeper guy! I wonder if it's the same driver. I think it might actually be the same driver. Well, that was it. Now he's leaving. Okay. So, yeah, that's loud, isn't it? Beeper guy has become something of a legend. I'm not sure what he was doing here. Maybe he just came for old time's sake. Somebody called him and said, he's live. Get over there, quick. All right, so we are over an hour, so I'm gonna end it there. Folks, I'm gonna be doing lives for CBN News the whole time I'm here, and I'll be doing lives for my own channel as well. Probably will do both of those lives as a little bit shorter, like maybe 30-minute lives instead of an hour, so that I don't literally stay up all night every night, because I also have my regular work to do, reporting for CBN and Newsmax. So if you're in the area in Israel, keep your eyes open for me wandering around in the street, and be sure to come say hello. Thank you very much for watching. Why don't Israel put armed men on the trucks and pass out food? Well, you got to be more organized than that when you're passing out food. Otherwise, it turns into a free-for-all. And they likely are managing the importation, the transportation of the food from the Kerem Shalom crossing into the distribution sites. The IDF is likely establishing a cordon for those guys to go through. I mean, it would be unthinkable for them to just open the gate and go, all right, go ahead, drive on into the site by yourself, make your way over there, because that would be a sitting duck for Hamas. So I'm virtually certain the IDF is protecting those convoys on the way into the distribution sites. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate all of you. And we will see you again next time on the Hot Zone. Take care.